You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings. Great deal going on. You put down a deposit, you get up to $1,000 in free plays. That simple, that easy. All right, joined by two of the dons of the industry, William Brad Allis, John Schuster. I'm Mike Luke. All right, Arizona wins 38-20. We're going to get right to it. Guys, I'll be honest with you. This was the first time in about 4 or 5 years that I felt that Arizona has a complete football team. Again, it's one game. Totally get that. But guys, what we saw out here was a team that was clearly better than San Diego State and clearly better on both sides of the ball.
And I think that's the thing. If you were a just casual observer, you didn't know anything about any of the teams. It took you about 4 minutes to come to the conclusion that the team with the A on its helmet was better than the team with the funky design. And that's an unusual, admittedly unusual, surprising place, I think, for Arizona fans to be. The transformation that has taken place certainly looks pretty impressive, at least in the early stages. And this is one of those things, I think, where Mike and Brad, you're a lot more involved in this than I am at this stage, but where Tucson media was kind of ahead of the curve here. I think the fans are still going to be a little bit behind, but when they start getting wind of what they saw today and maybe what Arizona can do moving forward, I think there's going to be a fair amount of interest in the community, because the Wildcats and the fan base and the program is in a really interesting position right now. It's good to see things going well, but they've got some time, even when they hit probably inevitable bumps in the road along the way.
William?
Yeah, it was a crazy game because I think in many regards, they're one holding penalty away from that being a 17-17 game, but they're a fumble away. I think Arizona scores on that next drive, and it's, 31-3? Arizona was the better team on both sides of the football, and frankly, they look better coached. And I don't know, we still have the jury out on Jedd Fisch and his team, but I didn't see many decisions that made me shake my head with Arizona, with maybe the exception of no one pulled poor Josh Donovan aside and said line up 2 feet closer. But other than that, San Diego State just looked ill-prepared for much of that football game. They did not know what to do when they went down, and that's what I thought the key was for Arizona. If Arizona could get out to the lead, I didn't think San Diego State could pass. I didn't know they'd only attempt about 15 for the game, or whatever it ended up being. On that final drive, they looked like they were trying to milk a lead, not come back from one. So congratulations to Arizona. They left a few plays out on the field, but that's football. But they were the better team today on both sides of the football against a program that, while I think we all knew this wasn't last year's San Diego State team, has been a 10-win program for over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing, guys. This is a solid football program that you beat. Again, I'm not saying that this is Alabama, but this is a team that's projected to win 8 or 9 games, and this is a team that probably last year would have beaten Arizona. But I want to start on the offensive side of the ball, guys. Jayden de Laura comes in here. He was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. And you immediately see the difference, the drastic difference in what he was able to do as opposed to Gunnar Cruz and to Will Plummer. He was able to move the ball. He was able to extend plays. He was able to fit the ball in. He just looked like a far more natural quarterback than what we saw last year, guys. Shu, and again, like Brad and I have kept a little bit closer view of it than Shu. So that's why I like having Shu in here, because he's just watching what he sees. But Shu, what did you see from Jayden de Laura out there? What did you think?
Everything that you said. There's a lot more poise in his game. And he is one of those quarterbacks who clearly has an arm, clearly can make a lot of throws, and has scrambling ability that can keep plays alive too. That's a nice combination to have, and he was able to take advantage of that. Arizona also did a real good job of putting him in a position to where he could access safety valves as well. Arizona's safety valve passing game was very effective. It also didn't hurt that, and Brad touched on this, that Arizona didn't commit a whole heck of a lot of penalties on the offensive end in this game either. So last year, for instance, when you were already struggling from a talent standpoint with what you could do, if Arizona gained 7 yards on a play and then, maybe got neutralized on the second down, then after that, if they lost 5 yards on a penalty or something like that, they were probably, the drive may have been in trouble. This looks clearly different. It looks like Arizona has weapons. and de Laura can get those weapons the ball. And you feel very good about what you see. He looked confident out there, and you can understand based on this performance why he was Pac-12 Freshman of the Year.
Yeah, William? I mean, any criticism of de Laura right now is nitpicking. He didn't throw a good deep ball on a few of those, but they were safe deep balls because he either threw them out of bounds or he underthrew it where it couldn't be picked. He missed, I think it might have been Wiley or Williams on the wheel route on that first possession when they settled for 3. But I'll tell you what I love about him, and we haven't seen this from an Arizona quarterback maybe since Anu, and maybe he understood when the pocket was collapsing. He stepped up very well. He rolled out very well. Did he take a bad sack? I'm not sure he got sacked. If he did, it was just the one time. He threw the ball away when he had to, or tried to make a play and put it in a safe spot. The one pick, he just tried to do too much, but I'm not sure if watching the replay, if Cowing actually goes a little further for it, it's not at least an incomplete. I thought he played a terrific game. And again, I just told you all the negatives, but that's me nitpicking. That's, because he was so good this football game. Made big throws when he needed to, picked up first downs, was able, again, as you said, find the safety valve. How many times do we hear the announcers that I wasn't sure he was going to be able to get a first down? Right. 2 or 3. He found Wiley underneath when they needed to. And, I don't mind, we've seen quarterbacks. I don't want you to throw a 9-yard pass when you need 10, but I don't mind you hitting the safety valve for 5 and hoping he can run for it. And I think he had that awareness. So, I think de Laura was advertised and maybe better.
Well, and you look at the weapons that he has around him, too. You look at last year, guys, and we talked about it. It was a combination of that you didn't really have competent quarterback play, but you also didn't really have wide receivers you're getting open. Being at practice, Jacob Cowing, the UTEP transfer, caught for 1,400 yards last year. He was the best player on the team all throughout practice. You saw that today. This is a guy that nobody can really cover. Again, he's a shorter guy, but this is a guy that's going to be in the NFL next year or whenever he chooses. You look around then, you look at the other 2 receivers, Dorian Singer, a guy who at the end of last year was probably Arizona's best wide receiver, and then a T-Mac. Guys, we talked about it before, but this is a receiving unit. This is a unit with talent that we haven't seen in quite a while, combined with a quarterback that we haven't seen. And that's got to be big time kudos to Jedd Fisch because he's overhauled that unit in 1 year. Generally, it takes 2 years, something like that. He overhauled this unit immediately.
I'm curious to see some of the other college football teams out there to see how fast. And again, it's early, but it looks pretty obvious that Arizona is going to be competitive in most of its games this year, which is a much different position than obviously they were last year, and obviously they were throughout most of the last coaching regime and in the tail end of the coaching regime before that. So it's been a while that Arizona has been in that position, and it happened quickly. So based on the way that the transfer portal works, the ability to get that kind of talent into a program and then get them to gel effectively, I think is a testament toward what's maybe going to separate a lot of programs. And so Arizona is probably sort of a benchmark in that regard right now. And they're in a position to be because they were so god-awful hideous last year. So it gives them an opportunity. Their transformation is glaring, even in one game.
Right.
And obviously in one game, there are a lot of, there's a lot of, you got to be careful, of course, but Arizona looked talented tonight and Fisch had pretty much everything to do with that. And as a result, I think it was, you've been on one of the local radio stations with some frequency, Mike, the
1490 ESPN Tucson.
The ESPN Tucson outlet. And on a couple of occasions, there were some comments that you and the other co-hosts were discussing that I thought stood out. And one of them had something to do with, it's hard to tell how good the coaching staff was, but this year with the talent that Fisch has around him, he's going to look like a much better coach just based on better talent.
Right.
And it looked like in this game, that was certainly the case. It certainly feels like Fisch knows what he's doing when he has good personnel around him. Last year, you couldn't tell whether he did, how he was, but last year is in the past. Now you're looking at an Arizona program that certainly based on this performance against a good program Doesn't really matter if it's a down year. Against a good program, Arizona turned in a very impressive football game, and it's one of those things that we haven't talked about with Arizona in quite some time. Quickly, there was something that Brad talked about too. Brad made this comment about how if San Diego State, they're one holding play away from being 17-7. Later on, if Burmeister isn't out of the game for something that happens, San Diego State might score a touchdown that cuts it to single possession, and maybe they've got momentum and can turn things around a little bit. But the reality was, again, if you looked at both of those teams just as a casual observer, the team that had more talent was the team in the white uniform.
Right.
And so the conversations that we've had over the years sounded a lot like what Brad just said in reverse. Arizona loses a game, by 18 points last year. And it's like, well, if they hadn't have had that holding penalty, it may have been, been able to cut it. And then if something else had happened, it might have worked in their favor. And then they could have gotten that close. And maybe there was that bad call that worked against them. But you always, the if thing is conversation that you have when your talent ultimately isn't as good play to play as the other guy is. And so San Diego State was in that position. San Diego State was in if position. Yeah, if that had broken their way, maybe they make it close. If that holding call hadn't have happened, well, if the holding call doesn't happen, he gets tackled. But if the holding call hadn't have happened, now it's 17-7, maybe they get the advantage, it cuts in their favor, so on and so forth. Simple reality is that Arizona was the better football team today, and that's a weird position for Arizona fans to be in. And for folks who follow this program and have suffered with this program, you have to feel pretty good based on today's performance as to where this thing may be going.
Brad, I want to get your take real quick because I think Boog makes an interesting point that I wanted to get to. You look at the offensive line and the defensive line again here, and again, we're going to get back to the receivers, the quarterbacks, everything. But Arizona was able to salt this game away running the football. And how many times have we talked about an Arizona team where, all right, well, we're just going to give up 9 yards per carry or whatever. And conversely, Arizona was able to stop the ball on the other side too. Again, I'm not making it out like this is Desert Swarm or anything, but the progress on both sides of the line, I think, was telling as well.
And I think what's maybe more impressive about the offensive line is they played most of the game without Savanea. That was Sam Longy playing right guard, I believe it was, today, which is, again, he's the backup on the right side. I'll tell you the two or three things that are most impressive to me, and this could even go back to the Stoops era. When has Arizona ever gotten the big stop, and when has Arizona ever had the big drive?
For sure.
And if you look at it in the first half, and I mentioned the one possession where the holding call, they end up getting the pick on the
ensuing play later. Right, yeah.
Which it seems like a Stoops team or Rich Rod team would have dropped it. More importantly, they get the punt, they give up the touchdown, they then turn it over on the pick, and they held them to a field goal. And that, I think, was huge because, frankly, San Diego State just wasn't moving the football. Their longest drive was 45 yards for a field goal. But most importantly, and this is what you go to, end of the third quarter, and they're nursing a pretty big, what was it, a 11-point lead at that time. They ran 5 minutes off the clock. They completely ran out the third quarter and then 2.5 minutes into the fourth quarter, and they capped it with that touchdown. And from there, you hate to say it, but in my head, I'm like, I think it's over. I don't think San Diego State can even, and frankly, I actually like that backup quarterback more than I like Burmeister, to be honest. Burmeister was not a good passer. Arizona fans, there's no buyer's remorse.
And Arizona knew, you know what, Brad? Arizona knew that as well. You could tell after about the first or second drive, guys, that Arizona didn't have a lot of respect for what Braxton Burmeister could do. Now, again, San Diego State was able to make some plays on the ground, but there was never a sense where you could tell that Arizona was like worried that, oh gosh, he can make some plays through the air. Again, he made a few passes, but there was never that sense that there was going to be anything consistent or sustained.
There was one point when Burmeister went down, and he never came back in. He was 5 of 10.
Right.
At that point, Jayden de Laura had 4 touchdown passes.
For sure.
And again, Burmeister was supposed to be the improvement to their passing game, which was lackluster last year. But they did not throw the ball well. I'm not sure they had any passing yards in the first quarter.
They also don't have separation with their receiving core either. But that's sometimes the way it goes. From an Arizona fan perspective, there's reason to be tempered because of some of San Diego State's flaws. But Arizona's been through so much of this that you're not going to feel bad that you won a game by 18 points because the team you played is dealing with quarterback issues and seems to be a little behind the curve as far as its receiving core is concerned and those sorts of things. This is so the point of that is that maybe as the season progresses, we find out that San Diego State, instead of an 11-win team, which they have been for 3 or 4 of the last 5 years, is a 7-win team this year. But still, going into that venue and being as dominant as Arizona was bodes very well for the progress of the U of A football program.
Let's say this was a 3-win San Diego State team. Mike, I'll let you get to. The fact is Arizona won on the road, which they haven't done often. They won and made plays after trying to let the other team back in, and they salted it away late by making plays, whether it was offense or defense. I think those are 3 things we don't always see from Arizona football. So this could be a 3-9 San Diego State team, and I still think it's a pretty good win the way they did it.
All right, let's talk. I want to talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball and Hunter Echols and the pass rush that Arizona brought. But have I told you guys about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX?
Please do. Please do, Mike. I'm out of touch.
All right, here's the deal. You put down the deposit, you can get up to $1,000 in free plays. But you got to be 21 and up. We're all 21 and up right here. You got to be Arizona only. We're Arizona only. And if you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. They will get you all taken care of. Now, again, you might say, Mike, you're a fanboy. You're going to back the A, whatever. But I told everybody all week, back the A, take Arizona money line right here. They're going to beat San Diego State, and I think that this could be an easy win for Arizona. Turns out it was. But you could say to yourself, Mike Luke, he's an idiot. Like, he figured out one thing. I'm still going to go against him. That's fine. Still, go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, put that down, and either bet with me or bet against me. As long as you're on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, that's all that matters. Okay, I want to talk to you a little bit about the defensive side and the pass rush here. Guys, it has been years since it felt like Arizona had a pass rush. And I'm not making it out like this was Rob Waldrop plugging up the middle and Teddy Bruschi coming off the edge. But Arizona was able to get fairly consistent pressure on the Oregon State, on the San Diego State passing game. And that started with Hunter Echols, the USC transfer that came through there. He had 2 sacks again. He left with an injury, but Jalen Harris was involved. You were getting push up the middle. This was, again, it wasn't Alabama, but this was a little bit of a different defensive line performance than we're used to seeing.
And one of those things that we've seen, and Brad can allude to this a little bit more in depth than I can from an overall recruiting standpoint. This seems to be one of the rare occasions, at least so far, where when you talk about Arizona getting a transfer from a major football power, the cornerback or the safety from Florida State kind of played like he belonged to Florida State.
Right.
The guy on the front line who you just mentioned kind of looked like he belonged to SC.
Right.
So instead of having, and again, Brad can do a better job rattling off some of the names here. There are a few players who in the past with Arizona, you got kind of excited about. Oh, they've got that transfer from Notre Dame. They've got that transfer from, a big school, a big name school, and thinking, man, that's a kid who can make an impact. It appears here, at least initially, that the players who have come in from major programs as a result of the transfer portal do have the potential to make a significant difference and improve Arizona overall.
William?
Yeah, you look at Echols, and I'm not sure, did he return to the game after leaving? I didn't notice him again, but Arizona
I didn't notice him either, yeah.
And that's the other thing. We have to note that Arizona changed their defense midway through that game. They did quit rushing the passer as much because they were protecting. They realized Burmeister wasn't going to throw. He was going to run the quarterback draw. And there was a great play where they rushed 4. It was 3rd and 5. Burmeister ran, and whoever was playing on the end, and it was a bigger guy. So it might have been Shand kicked out. It might have been
I believe it was
Jalen Harris.
Paris Shand off the side. Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and he just kind of one arm grabbed him, and then Burmeister did not have the strength to break the tackle, and he held him to a half-yard gain, and that I think that led to the field goal instead of on that drive where they really needed points. But I thought it was very savvy. First of all, that they didn't over pursue. They didn't go hair on fire towards the quarterback. They kept in their lanes, and then when he did attempt the quarterback draw, they were there. But Echols early on was fantastic, and I'm not sure he ever played that well at USC.
Right.
He's a guy, when they took him, I was kind of like, I mean, he's talented.
But he had never done anything. And how many times have we seen guys from major schools that come in here? It's the Leon Blunt thing, and that's a reference from somebody in the 90s that people might get, where you come in from Notre Dame, you come in from SC, and there's a reason that you end up at Arizona. So immediately you're immediately thinking to yourself, all right, dude, whatever. Like, there's a reason that you're here. But I'm telling you, man, like you look at DJ Williams right there. You look at Hunter Echols. These were guys that the coaching staff were in on. These were guys that the coaching staff were in on early. And this isn't roster filler. These are difference makers, William.
Yeah, typically when Arizona used to get a guy from a big school that was successful, and I'm thinking of the two Texas receivers, they kind of had to come to Arizona because they got one of them got into a fight, and they might have both gotten kicked off the team.
Right.
Otherwise you get, unfortunately, Rutherford's okay, but he wasn't cracking the 3-man cornerback rotation at Notre Dame. But even Echols, he didn't do much, at least with, DJ Williams, he just kind of always played the numbers game.
Right.
But Williams was great today. I mean, he's not a game breaker, but he was consistently 4, 5, 6, 9. I don't think he had a run of less than 3.
Right.
Echols, again, changed the game early on. I can't tell you what Savea did, but I know he was out there.
For sure.
And that's what you want sometimes that's what you want from a D lineman, interior D lineman. How many big runs did they get up the middle? Not many.
Right.
They got a couple on the end when I think it was Bird, the little running back, got around the end, and the rest were kind of broken runs, but they never had a chunk play all day. Right. They had that one good pass to the tight end. So I think that was the key for Arizona. They never gave up a sustained drive. The longest drive was the 45-yarder that led to a field goal. If it wasn't for turnovers and the weird punt, that's one of as weird as this is going to say, one of the weirdest plays in Arizona history, and that's saying a lot. San Diego State didn't do anything. Their best drive was the one late where they fumbled, and they got 20, 25 yards off weird Arizona penalties. So the defense was impressive. And you talk about the transfers, and the worry is a guy like Cowing or was it McLaughlin moving up in talent. They fit in. And, the other guys sliding over to a comparable program where they are bigger fish in a smaller pond, and they look like it.
I think Saul Bookman made a very good point. Again, Saul's my boss, so I'm always going to tell him he made a good point and not a bad point. But you look at Arizona now, and you do look at Arizona, and you think that there's guys that I could see playing at the next level. And again, growing up, I'm not saying that Arizona's USC or Alabama, but in the 90s, let's just use that for an example. You always knew that there were NFL players on the team. I'll use 98 for an example. You knew that Dennis Northcutt was going to play in the NFL. You knew that Marcus Bell was going to play in the NFL. You knew Trung Candate. I can keep going on and on. Now, Jacob Cowing clearly going to play in the NFL, but you look out there and you immediately, even if you don't know who those players are, you think to yourself, man, there's some guys that have some next level potential there, Shu.
And it looks like what they'll be able to do is allow Arizona to game in and game out to be representative. This certainly makes this weekend's game, home opener, pretty darn interesting. Because you have a team with legitimate talent coming in, and this was another point your radio cohort made about how Mississippi State plays an untraditional SEC style, so the physicality may not be as dramatic, but they still have SEC talent, and they're still pretty damn good. So, it is the type of game where at home Arizona could be humbled against a team that's got legit Power 5 talent. But Arizona certainly made a very nice impression, and it feels like more often than not, they're going to be competitive with a chance to win. And while it's way too early to make ridiculous predictions, it wouldn't surprise me if, 2 or 3 weeks from now, there's some discussion that Arizona might be sniffing the top 25. And if that's the case, based on how gruesome this program was last year, then, that in and of itself is a pretty remarkable accomplishment.
All right, William, real quick before we I got to tell you guys about, again, the Four Peaks Brewery and Tap and Bottle. I was down there, the downtown location, watching the game. Everybody needs to come down there. It's fantastic. You got a great TV setup. You got great drink deals. It's just a awesome environment right there. The people, Scott and Rebecca, are fantastic. Again, we're going to be doing this for every away football game. So if you can make it down there, make it down there. Again, it's down on 6th Avenue. More to come, obviously. We're going to be talking about this, but it was a great environment. So try to make it down there if you can. Brad, when you look at this team right now, after what you saw today, have you recalibrated your expectations? Do you look at now and say, this is a team that should maybe be in a bowl game, or what do you exactly think?
And I think I said this to you on Tuesday. I said I thought this was a pivotal game. And if I didn't say it to you on Tuesday, I definitely said it in my podcast. But this is, to me, a game where if Arizona wins, we can start now considering it a bowl team. Because of two reasons. One, because you got to win you weren't supposed to get a win at. Right. Two, you did it again. I don't think this is as good a San Diego State team as you've seen the last few years.
For sure.
Still a really good team on the road. So suddenly it's not crazy talk to say, you know what? They can beat Mississippi State. You know what? As weird as this sounds, they can beat North Dakota State.
Right? We can fit that one in there.
You know what? Can they win in the Rose Bowl? Can they win in Seattle?
Oh, I think so.
Again, we could also be recalibrating Oregon after today. Although, I think that's going to be one we'll look back and go, Oregon's not that bad. But so I think I think if they had lost this game but looked good like they did against BYU last year, I would have said, yeah, you're looking at a 3-win football team. Now I don't think 5, 6, 7 is unreasonable. It's still difficult, but it's not unreasonable. So I think now if they're at least not playing for a bowl game when ASU comes to town, then there's something wrong.
Real quick, I got to tell you how talented Saul Bookman is. He was asked to change his profile picture, and he literally changed it within about 30 seconds. Saul, that's not something that I could have never done without calling Jacob Franklin to be able to help me with. So I got to give you guys a lot of credit for being smarter than me.
That's why he's the boss.
Sorry about that. All right, Shu, go ahead. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I mean, we were talking about how Jedd Fisch has turned the program around so well, and without a doubt, in 30 seconds, Saul Bookman tops him. That is seriously impressive work. But, one of the however, I do feel kind of bad here because if there are a lot of folks watching this podcast either now or a little bit later, Mike, I don't want you to be out of a job here. So I don't want Saul or Jacob or some of the other guys to be out of a job here. But if the Arizona Wildcat fans start piling in on how many on the over with Arizona's futures on how many games they're going to win this year, you might make DraftKings bankrupt. So, there's there's always a flip side to the coin that's a little bit of a concern.
True. Let's temper the expectations.
Well, they might balance it by all the ASU fans who hit the over on ASU
by accident.
And that's true. They somehow won 40-3 and did not look good doing it.
By mistake, ultimately. But generally speaking, how good is the Pac-12?
And see, that's the question. We're going to get to that in just a second here. But real quick, I want to tell you about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. All right. You might be saying, Mike, what's the deal with the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX?
Mike, what's the deal with the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code PHNX?
It gets so much easier than you think. You put down a deposit, you can get up to $1,000 in free plays. Football is here. Basketball is here. Everybody wants to be on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I kid you not, when I was at Tap and Bottle, a guy came up to me who I didn't even know, and he said, code word PHNX. It's taking off. It's a movement. If there's going to be shirts out there, they're going to be it's just going to say code word PHNX.
Did he back the A?
He backed the A. My parents showed up, by the way, wearing back the A t-shirts. They don't drink, but they had a lot of water and they consumed some very good food from the food truck. So again, I think mom's watching, so don't beat me up. But again, DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. On a serious note, that's where you want to be. It's easy to navigate. An idiot like myself or an old person like Shu can easily navigate it.
All right, let's not get too carried away.
Mike, I will say this in all seriousness. So Saul, if you're listening, I had an acquaintance come up to me and said he switched services because of you and your show.
There you go.
I'm telling you. He was using a different online wagering app, and he moved to DraftKings.
Man, and it was it was really nice when DraftKings had a presence in Arizona before all those Wildcat fans took the over on the number of games they were going to win this year. So nostalgic in a few weeks.
And that's what we're doing right here again. Code word PHNX Draftkings Sportsbook app. All right. Now let's talk a little bit about maybe it's time. Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but maybe it's time to recalibrate expectations a little bit. We got Mississippi State coming in. Then you got North Dakota State after that. Let's talk about what we want to see there. And then we're going to get into the conference slate a little bit because I think the conference slate actually works itself out. Again, Mississippi State's a solid SEC team. But like when I was on ESPN Tucson, Ollie Farhang made the point. It's not that beat you up in the trenches type team. It's very much of a Mike Leach type offense where you're going to look to spread the ball around. And this is a game that I think Arizona's got a very good chance in. And I'm curious to see what the spread is on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX. What do you guys think?
What do I think the spread's going to be?
Just what do you expect from the game? What do you expect the spread to be?
I definitely think, I actually think the spread might come down. My guess was it was probably 8 before. I bet it's somewhere in the 4.5 range.
Right.
I don't know if Mississippi State's even playing tonight. Depends how they look. But I think the line's going to move quite a bit because of how good Arizona did look today. I think what you have to do is I think you have to look at the preseason now or the non-conference as a totality. I think right now, since you got that win, if they're not 2-1 somehow, some combination, you're disappointed.
Right.
Because if you look at it, Mississippi State is probably better than Arizona from a talent standpoint.
Right.
But they're, again, as you mentioned, they're not that typical SEC team, so they kind of play into some of Arizona's strengths. They're also coming to the West Coast playing an 11 o'clock local time game. There's a reason SEC teams don't come west.
Right.
It's because they don't want to play the weird time. They don't want to play out of their, comfort zone. And I don't know. I honestly don't know. I can't imagine Mississippi State is among the top traveling teams in the SEC. So when LSU came here, what was that, 15 years ago?
Brad, we don't talk about the LSU home and home.
There were 25,000 LSU fans, and
they're some of the best fans in college football.
Yeah,
no doubt.
There will be a contingent of
I think there's going to be a lot of people here,
but I don't know if it's going to dominate the stadium. So again, you're playing at 11 o'clock at night. While they're used to the heat and humidity, it's going to be that weird Arizona dry heat, but it'll probably be nice by game time. But again, I think it's the late game and traveling they don't travel 3,000 miles. They don't even do that for bowl games.
Right.
So I think, again, this is going to be an interesting, a lot of factors work into Arizona's favor that might not if this was LSU coming on a 5 o'clock game.
Right.
Or even Arizona playing Mississippi State in a neutral location, like in Dallas. And then you got a North Dakota State team that, again, is good, really good. But I can't imagine they're as talented as San Diego State.
Right.
They shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be. And if they are, and even if they are maybe 1-25, they're certainly not 26-50 because of scholarship limits. So, yeah, I think there's a realistic possibility because they got this one today that we could be looking at 2-1, 3-0. No, if not, then yes, you're disappointed. But I think, again, this really gives you a lot of momentum and optimism heading into this season.
Yeah. And Shu, I wanted to ask you this because, again, the reason that I like Shu, and again, I wouldn't be in the position I am without Shu. And I'll continue to say this. He's been
because you really like the great grandfatherly types.
No, honestly, Lo, Shu's been with me through thick and thin.
It's like 18 or 19 generation difference now.
I'll put it to you like this without getting too mushy. If I ever do get married, if there's ever a woman fortunate enough to marry me, I know that's probably going to turn off every single woman ever talking to me.
No, I like the confidence.
Right. John Schuster will 100% be my best man. That's how close I am with Schuster right there. And he knows that as well.
But I don't believe you. It's going to be your dog, then Shu. She'll be sick.
Oh, no, it's going to be Schuster for sure.
Okay. But over the dog, wow.
What I do want to ask, Ted Wardo will not be my best man.
Ring bearer.
Let me ask you this though, because Brad and I follow this more closely, obviously, than you do at this point. But watching this team right now, watching what you saw, watching what we talked about last year, what immediately stuck out to you?
Their speed. That was something I thought they were I was surprised at how much faster they were than San Diego State. And that's an area that I think they've struggled with throughout the course of a lot of campaigns. That was one of the things, the quarterback's poise, having weapons in key offensive positions. That's all very important. But across the board, they were pretty quick.
Yeah.
And got to the ball a lot faster than SDSU did. I thought that was the thing that jumped out at me immediately. One thing I want to talk about as I pivot a bit to that Mississippi State matchup, and this has been one of the areas of frustration where scheduling has kind of irritated me with some of the past coaches and in general. When teams schedule to some degree, a lot of times, obviously, they schedule to win games and they're worried about their conference, and I get all of that. And they sort of forget the fans in this process. But if you go back and think of some of the more entertaining, electric games at Arizona Stadium over the course of maybe the last 15 years, probably at least 50% of them have been marquee non-conference matchups.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I like when those games are when you have the willingness to schedule those games. I think it's a good thing. Now, obviously, in the Stoops era, when they had a top 10 LSU team double up on them and a top 10 Stanford team and a top 10 USC team double up on them, things got out of hand and they weren't prepared for it and it just unraveled. But very often from a fan perspective, there's an opportunity in these non-conference matchups, Iowa, Oklahoma State, and a game like this, a very legitimate SEC program and a very legitimate team in Mississippi State coming into town. You have an opportunity to go to that stadium and see if Arizona can make a statement in that matchup with an electric fan base, which has been missing for most of the last 10 years. So it would be nice I like the potential of these kinds of games. And I think the potential for the fans is there as well. And it gives you the opportunity to go to these matchups where, you've got a fan base that's really in it. And it feels like Arizona Stadium has energy, which, has been a very rare thing over the course of the last few years. So I'm hopeful that Mississippi State game provides that kind of atmosphere. I actually expect Mississippi State to draw. I expect them to
I do
a lot
as well.
of people out here. And if they do, and Arizona can back that energy and you've got a competitive game, I think that can be a fun atmosphere at Arizona Stadium Saturday night.
Okay, real quick, Brad, I want to ask you about
tickets are selling too.
Yeah, I want to ask you about this because a couple people, and there's people that listen, the people that are commentating here, I'm not going to speak for Brad or Shu, but they're smarter than me. So we need to get to a lot of these comments because it's about these people. And again, Barrett Hartman, Robbie DeWitt made a great point right here. Guys, excuse me, that wasn't the point. Barrett, you made many good points, but here's the point that I really like. Can we talk about having red zone touchdowns? Those are fun. Guys, yes. How many times in the last 5-6 years did it feel like Arizona was able to get the ball down to the 20-yard line, the 15-yard line, and it results in a missed punt or it results in a snafu somewhere along the line? That didn't happen today. Again, that didn't really happen today. When Arizona got the ball inside the 20, the majority of the time, guess what? They pushed it through. That's not something that we're used to seeing in recent years, fellas.
And two of the first three possessions, I'm sorry, Brad. Two of the first three possessions, they scored touchdowns and got a field goal in the other one. That's a good percentage. Wasn't Arizona the worst team in the country inside the 20 last year?
Yes.
And the reason that is that you don't have separation and talent at your skill positions. So Arizona clearly has improved that, and it showed in today's matchup, and hopefully that's something they can carry forward.
Well, I think they scored on 100% of the red zone trips. They did settle for the one field goal. And even with that field goal, I'll tell you what, de Laura just missed. I think it was
just missed him
on the wheel route. He had him on the wheel route. He went underneath the cowing and didn't throw it quite well enough to him. But they got the field goal. How many times under Rich Rod, especially, did they start chasing points and then they come away with nothing?
Right.
Because you're going for it on fourth down and you're no, I mean, Arizona was efficient. They had good play calls. And they executed. I mean, there was the one pass to Cowing underneath. I think it was for the third touchdown. And he just made the move on the guy. The guy thought he had outside help, didn't have outside help, and he almost walked in. In years past, for some reason, the receiver would have cut to the inside and run right into a linebacker or something. They just didn't do that. They executed. The play calling was nice in those areas. And, I want to add to this. You guys talk about the speed. How about the size?
Yeah. They didn't look small. It didn't look like guys like us in the trenches.
I'll even tell you this. As big as T-Mac is, every once in a while I had trouble finding him because all the other receivers are, Cowling's not real tall, but the other guys are.
Right.
On the defensive line, you didn't see basically a glorified linebacker playing D end. Even the safeties and corners are tall. So I thought across the board, they just look bigger and more athletic to go along with, pure speed.
I'm going to give Arizona fans some credit right here. I'm also going to give, because I've been beaten up a lot over the years for always sticking up for my buddy Dave Hickey. Dave Hickey, I'm going to tell you something right here. And he told me this at the time when Jedd Fisch was hired, because I'll be honest with you, again, I don't want to sound like somebody just throwing out names right there, but I'm fairly good friends with Dave. And when Fisch was hired, I asked him, I was like, dude, I don't get it. And he said, listen, the thing at this job is that you need somebody in here that wants to be here, first and foremost, because this is not an easy place to win. Second, you've got to be able to get a coaching staff in here that embraces that grind, that embraces that day in, day out, because it's not an easy place to recruit to. He's got a staff right here that embraces recruiting. And again, in 1 year, you notice a massive turnaround just in the overall talent right there, which I think is incredibly impressive. And again, we're going to still find out. It's too early to spike the football on Jedd Fisch or with or on. With whatever. With whatever.
Fisch would probably prefer the former version as opposed to literally the latter.
But guys, what you saw, though, is a guy, though, that Jedd Fisch, his first thing that he said in his presser was, nobody will outwork us on the recruiting trail. We might not get every kid that we want, but nobody will outwork us. We will make them tell us no until the very end. And a great example of that is a T-Mac, for example, 5-star wide receiver. This is a guy that was committed to Oregon. Arizona continued to recruit him. Arizona said, you know what? Until you sign that paper, we are going to recruit you. And lo and behold, Arizona gets him, has a touchdown today, looks good out there. There's just something to be said, I think, for Arizona fans for hard work. Dick Tomey, I think, was kind of the epitome of that. Again, I don't want to make Dick Tomey out like he was Lute Olson, because he was not. But Jedd Fisch, to me, is the first guy since maybe Mike Stoops that has embraced being here. And that, to me, is a big thing.
One of the things I think, if you look at this from an overall almost movie script angle, is if Arizona actually becomes a legitimately successful regular top 20 football program, if they become Utah, something down those lines, the story behind Jedd Fisch, I think, becomes very interesting. Journeyman who bounced around from a multitude of positions and either decided to move or couldn't stick anywhere.
Right.
Has somehow convinces an administration in utter turmoil to hire him, and then ultimately still has a vision to put this together at one of the more difficult Power 5 football locations to win in the country.
Right.
And that's not, I mean, that is statistically accurate. That's not hyperbole. Arizona is a brutal football job. Tomey, Makovic, Stoops, Rodriguez, Sumlin, none of them left Arizona with a better job. None of them had upward mobility as football coaches.
Right.
This is a job where people come to die. And
it's true.
If it sucks, I get it. It sucks. I get it. You won 10 games once under Rodriguez. I get it. Stoops had some spikes here and there, and Tomey had a couple good years in there. But if you listen to guys on the radio, you're talking about, Desert Swarm. Desert Swarm was bleeping 30 years ago.
30 years ago. And it's an era that will never be repeated.
And then you're talking about, the 99 team, which was great. That was a millennium ago.
Right.
What are we talking about? That is all you need to know about how difficult it has been to consistently be successful at Arizona. Now, we're talking about one game where they beat a San Diego State team on the road that might be a 6-win football team. We'll find out as this thing progresses, but right now we're so in the early stages of this process where it at the very least feels like there's the possibility that Arizona could have a better year than expected this year and improve continuously in year 3 and year 4 and maybe be on the fringe of ultimately building something. And if that happens, if you look at the unusual way that occurred, and again, that's a long way off.
Right.
And it's a pretty amazing story with Fisch and this administration at the forefront.
Brad, you go real quick. This is embarrassing. I've never had to do this before, but I've been drinking a lot of water with my parents, so I got to use the restroom real quick. Go ahead, Brad, real quick.
The crazy thing to me is when Fisch was hired, I said, okay, I don't like the hire, but here's what you have to do. And I spelled out a lot of things. I said, you got to embrace the alums, the community, but here's what you really have to do. One, you have to have a recruiting niche. They seem to have two. One is they're back in the Polynesian community, and they're getting, just look at it. Arizona, which
Brad, that they got there fairly quickly.
Yes, and one thing, it was crazy when Anu Solomon got the starting job. I looked at the data, and I can't find it as much. Arizona had the most Polynesian starting quarterbacks of all time. Colorado and Hawaii were close. Now, since then, I don't know how many Hawaii.
That number is probably navigated a little bit, but at the time, that makes the point. It makes the point that you're trying to get to, that Arizona was tight in that community, and then it drifted away.
And not just offensive linemen and defensive line. Well, guess what? Their starting quarterback is also Polynesian. Their backup quarterback is also Polynesian. Their wide receiver, Polynesian. Secondly, and after the first year, they didn't do a good job with it, but they really did, as we mentioned earlier, a good job with the transfer market.
Right.
Well, guess what? Tucson, Arizona is a great place to go to college. It may be hard to win football games and have upward mobility as a coach. And I know someone mentioned Larry Smith, but that was 35.
That's what I was saying. I didn't know what to say to that because that's even.
Yeah. But
that makes my point.
But
Larry Smith makes my point.
If you're Jacob Cowing, and maybe he's the bad example because he's basically married with kids. He's not married, but if you're a 21-year-old guy and you've been playing in Bloomington, Indiana for 3 years, or maybe coming to Tucson is not a bad place to finish out your career. And he's done that. The other thing is I thought you had to have a gimmick on one side of the ball or the other. I did not think an NFL offense was the gimmick, but the more I think about it, how many teams are running pro-style offense right now in college football? Jayden de Laura may not be a prototypical NFL quarterback, but he's probably going to get a look somewhere because he's going to walk right in, and you don't have to teach him how to go under center. You don't have to teach him how to read an NFL playbook. You don't have to teach him how to do play action or the pro-style RPO. If he can start for 2 years and suddenly he fills that formula that, as you know, as I love for quarterbacks, that's 3+ years as a starter at a major program when you're not running a pure gimmick offense. And de Laura is going to be that guy. And that might be a way you can recruit guys you shouldn't be able to recruit at Arizona to play quarterback. And again, it might be the transfer market. It might be like, I've got 1 year left and I've been playing at, Eastern Washington, and we throw it 87 times a game out of the gun. Well, maybe I should go to Arizona, finish out, learn how to play pro, and then, sneak into the third round as a draft pick. So I think, again, he's done those things. in addition to getting back into Hamilton and Chandler High and Scottsdale Saguaro and those. So I think he's done a very good job. Now he has to finish the job, but he has done everything I think he needed to do to put himself in a position to be that unique unicorn at Arizona who can actually win football games.
All right, Kip Bennett keeps asking about this. I guess I'll address this.
I mentioned Caleb. I didn't say it by name. I said the 2 Texas receivers.
Yeah, no, they were talented. I'm just telling you that. Here's what I'm saying. Jacob Cowing is an NFL wide receiver. He's going to be in the NFL at some point. Caleb Jones is a solid wide receiver at the U of A. He's a lot like Dan Buckner. He's not a next level dude. Jacob Cowing's a next level guy. There's again, that's not a diss towards Caleb Jones or anything like that. This is the way it is.
Sadly, Caleb's brother was better, Zay.
Zay is because Zay's in the league right now.
Yep.
Real quick, and then because I want to get into the Pac-12 before we sign off here, but I got to tell you again about Tap and Bottle. These people are absolutely fantastic. Scott and Rebecca, I've known them for about 10 years. Shu knows them. Brad knows them. These are they run Tap and Bottle. That's the place to be downtown. Shu weenied out and didn't come join me. I don't blame him. If I were him, I wouldn't have joined me either. But that means that you guys should have as well. So, but again, great beers on tap, great place to watch, all kinds of stuff. Four Peaks Brewery, got all kinds of good stuff there. Come check us out next away game. All the away games, we're going to be at Tap and Bottle, and we're going to be doing this into basketball season as well. So look at it that way. All right. Check it out, though. Tap and Bottle and fourpeaksbrewery.com. Fantastic stuff. Couple things. Stevie Rocker has been brought up. In my opinion, and William can speak on this, Stevie Rocker isn't as good as these other running backs. I have no problem. I like Stevie Rocker, but he's not going to ever get over third on the depth chart, barring injury on these guys. William, would you agree with that?
Yeah, unfortunately. Right now, if I'm Stevie Rocker, I'm probably looking at redshirting.
Right.
And then trying to see where we're at. DJ Williams has 1 year left, so he's gone.
Right.
And then I'm trying to evaluate, how I don't know how much. I think Wiley has 2 years left.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not writing Rocker off, but
he's not. But the problem is he's not beating out Jonah Coleman ever. He's not beating out DJ Williams. Those are guys who are going to be in front of him his entire career.
Yeah, would Rocker have started last year?
No,
not last year either.
Nah, he did again. He's a solid guy.
Rocker played last year a little bit, yeah.
But again,
he couldn't start. So yeah, I think
the point I was getting to that failed miserably right there is that Arizona has more depth and a little bit more talent this year than it ultimately did last year, and that's a good thing.
Kip.
Rocker has to decide, does he want to be a guy who probably never gets more than 5 carries a game and play for your hometown team, or does he want to move on? And as much as that's brutal, and I love having the local kids, I was texting with someone who was upset we had a Hawaiian quarterback. I'm like, well, there ain't no Tucson quarterback.
Right.
The best Tucson quarterback in the last 15 years was Rodriguez.
Kip, and one more point, my man. I've been telling everybody on the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX, to take the over on Arizona and to take them to win money line. So again, I'm in on Arizona. So I don't know where this is all going, but again, I'm back in the A all the way here. Now let's talk about in conference. Now let's talk about the Pac-12 South before we sign off. Utah to me right now.
Is there a South anymore? By the way,
what's that?
Did they get rid of the?
Yeah,
I can't remember if that was this year or next year.
Yeah, I should know that, and I don't know that, and I do apologize for you if that's this year or if that's.
I just heard about it the other day, and I was blindsided.
Yeah. We're all old around here, but let's just look at the South. Let's pretend it's the way that it's been. I look at it, and I watched ASU, and again, Jacob Franklin is listening. We have a lot of people at PHNX who are, believe it or not, even though they went to ASU, they're good people. I know. You might be saying to yourself, I don't really buy that, but. They are. Jacob Franklin is a good person. He just is. I vouch for Jacob. I vouch for Shane Deef, all those people. But Arizona, to me, I think can beat ASU, and I expect them to beat ASU, to be honest with you. Arizona should smash Colorado. I watched Colorado last night, and I thought that I was looking at, like, Pima Community College. Then after that, it's UCLA, USC, and Utah. Again, those are all teams that are good, but again, outside of Utah and USC, I think that Arizona can beat UCLA. I think Arizona's going to make some moves in the conference this year, fellas.
Yeah, UCLA was scuffling early with Bowling Green, then found their groove, as you should, against Bowling Green. USC had to put 24 on the board in the second quarter to pull away from Rice. Again, who cares what you do in the first quarter? And Utah just took the lead in the Swamp. I think Utah's, I don't know how good USC is going to be, but they have more talent than Arizona. To me, I want to see UCLA get it done. I did just look. It does not look like there are divisions based upon, although the schedule's still built that way. And then, you've got a Utah team that's really good, but ASU is good if everything works out right for them. But they just feel like a team that they're going to have one, and it could happen next week against Oklahoma State, and the wheels are just going to come off. I feel like they're a team that is just teetering. They lack.
They're fragile.
Right.
And then you look at the top half of the league. Cal's not very good. They're gonna, Stanford. I have no idea what Stanford is. I have no idea what Washington State is. I have no idea what Oregon State and Washington. Really, I mean, even now Oregon. So suddenly, it's going to be really hard for obviously Arizona to be in one of those top two spots to get in. Obviously, and Arizona's again. We don't know what Arizona is, but suddenly, you wonder, can they pick off a UCLA team?
That's what I'm saying.
Over the years, how many times has the inferior Arizona team got in, beat UCLA, and then the on par team is the one that goes to the Rose Bowl and gets blown out.
Right.
The Mercedes Lewis game, that Rich Rod game.
Yeah.
Same thing. Again, Washington State. What are they going to be at the end of the year? I don't know. I mean, I have no idea with Washington State. Obviously, they thought so little of de Laura that they brought in the kid from, what was it, Incarnate Word or Liberty?
Yes. Cameron Ward.
Yeah, who's really good. But
he's an Incarnate Word.
Would you have risked your Pac-10 Freshman of the Year quarterback for the Incarnate Word quarterback? If you want to go back, Arizona had a chance to bring in a high-profile transfer quarterback, but decided to stick with Willie Tuitama. Because that's what you do. And I found that whole thing interesting, but I'm glad Arizona has de Laura. So, I think the league, if there is an elite team, it's Utah. I don't think USC is quite there yet. Again, they could end up winning 10 because I think they're better than most teams in this league. But this really looks like a league that is going to be kind of crazy this year.
Right.
And, Arizona unfortunately has that 5-game slog in the middle where they're in some order at Washington, at UCLA, home for Oregon and USC, and at Utah or something like that. It's just kind of a ridiculous the way the two teams that seem like they might not be quite as good are the ones you get on the road, but you bookend that with that week beginning and what could potentially be a weekend, and that's where you're maybe trying to carve out enough wins to get yourself into a bowl game.
Arizona's one of those teams right now that makes the conference deeper. I don't know if it makes it better at the top. That's a long way to go right now. I'm not sure how good this conference is at the top. The fact that as we are speaking now, Utah is winning at Florida, that's good representation. And I think USC is going to be probably a more talented version of what Arizona is trying to do, win with a bunch of transfers fast. So we'll see how effective they ultimately are. We're talking very good about Arizona trying to put all of this together right now. Perhaps the transfer thing is something that you get some inconsistency along the way. And there will be some conference games where, Arizona, maybe it doesn't fit. And it just doesn't kind of click. That's one of the interesting things I think about this league as a whole is that you have you'll have a team, and who knows what that team is, that gets into late October and November and gets a little bit of discussion, and they've won a couple more games than they should. And then, there's a lot of talk around them maybe getting hot and maybe making something happen. And then they revert's the wrong word, but they ultimately become what they are. Instead of you think, man, if you could string some things together, you could be an 11-win football team, but really you're 8 or 9. And eventually that's going to catch up to you, and you happen to have some benefit early on. And then you wondered, why did they lose at Oregon State when they knocked off UCLA and Washington earlier this year? It's the nature of the conference. The conference isn't very top heavy, but week to week, it's got some good teams that are very competitive. And I think at the very least, when you look at that 5-game gauntlet that Arizona has in the middle of the season, for those other teams on the schedule, they could have last year looked at Arizona as almost a week off.
Right.
That was
it's a get healthy week.
That was the bye that counted. Now they can't, because Arizona appears to have enough talent to be able to compete favorably or on a fairly consistent week-to-week basis. Again, that doesn't mean that they're going to be consistent and there are going to be frustrations along the way. But if this team, the fact that they appear to have the prospect of being competitive pretty much every week out is definitely moving in the right direction.
Guys, first of all, everybody out there, back the freaking A. This was the kind of game that I think Arizona fans needed. This is the type of game that we all wanted. I can't thank you all enough for hopping on right here. All of the comments, over a couple of hundred comments, everybody out there, you are greatly, and I mean this sincerely, because without you, this doesn't happen. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Everybody out there, you are greatly appreciated. Brad, Shoe's going to be with me every game, but I will say this, Brad, you are welcome every game. Again, you're somebody that I grew up listening to, grew up reading. Again, I can't thank you guys enough. It's about building community right here. Thanks again, guys. All the listeners, Brad, Shoe, appreciate you guys like you can't believe.
Have fun, and I'll hop on when I can. Little League Baseball is going to make me watching a lot of games, probably on DVR. But I'll come on whenever I can, and we have every Tuesday. Right.
All right. Again, everybody out there, thanks again. Back the A-Ray. We'll see you next time. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast, brought to you again by DraftKings. Again, Jacob Franklin out there making me sound way better than I should, making me look taller than I actually am. Appreciate all of you guys. Again, we will be back with you post-game next Saturday. I'll be with you all throughout the week. Mr. William Brad Alice will be with us on Tuesdays. Everybody out there, back the A. You have been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.